Hey guys, it's Caban from True Champion Gaming, back with another deck profile, and this is one that I designed basically to just beat Rai. So this is the Rai killer. You're gonna have pretty much almost an auto win against Rai. It's the closest that you can get as to an auto win against Rai. So it's kind of more of a casual level deck. I don't really expect this to get like first place at a regionals or anything like that, but if you just have some annoying Rai players at your locals that just keep bringing it and comboing on you, you can teach them a lesson with this deck. So let's get right into it. We're going to go Spirit of Fire, of course, and then we have level 1 Lorraine. So this deck isn't actually going to go into level 3. We do have the level 2 Lorraine in here as well, but you usually won't even go into this, honestly. Floating memory is pretty sparse in this deck. It's not really doing the typical Fire Lorraine thing where you're just cycling and discarding a bunch of floating memory to like slowly gain card advantage. You're going to be more focused on just bringing out cheap stuff to do damage. So Lorraine, you'll usually bring out Sword of Seeking like normal Lorraine decks do. And then we run 2 free swords that you will usually just like go into these. You know, that's not very common for like a Lorraine to do. Usually like this package is more like an Onsol package or something when you're seeing this type in the material deck. But I will frequently just go into an ornamental greatsword because you can buff an ally by 1 and then either just attack and that's 2 damage that you've done, which in this deck, you know, every single damage counts, or you can sack it off for like a blazing throw, so you're doing 4 from the blazing throw and then 1 from the buff that you give an ally. Or Sword of Adversity, if they've just sweeped your whole board, you can bring this out for free and then it'll be a 2 damage attacker that you use with Rending Flames, and now you have a 10 damage attack. So Sword of Adversity is really good, like versus Lorraine basically. And then Drawn Blade's fantastic. If you do have an extra floating memory, you can draw a card, basically treat it like a GCR that you can also do a blazing throw with. And then Warrior's Longsword, if you have the floating memory, is just a solid option as well. Then we have Grand Crusader's Ring, because every deck's going to run that. And then we have 2 baubles, because like I said, you really don't, you have the space in this deck because you're not running level 3, you're not running like an Onsol package or something, and you really just don't have that much floating memory. So just drawing a bunch of cards to help balance Gildas or just get more cards to do more tempo things with is really nice. And then we have the Blinding Orb. This is for decks like Wind Lorraine and stuff. If they're going to be greedy and only keep 2 cards in their hand for the Valiant Breeze, you can pop Blinding Orb and stop that. But you know, if they see this out there, then they're probably going to try to keep more cards in hand, but that slows them down from killing you. So just a really solid option. So let's get into the deck. We're going to start off with one of my favorite cards. I always am trying to throw this in decks because I just think it's so good. Gildas. So very, very solid aggro option. If you've watched any of our other videos, you can hear me talking about her more in detail. And we also run 4 Woodland Squirrels. I really like this combination because it allows you to do Gildas turn 1, even if you're going second, because you'll have 8 cards in hand where normally 7 is the magic number with Gildas. But if you play a squirrel down for free, now you've basically made your hand cost 7. So going second, if you play squirrels and Gildas, you're doing 5 damage on the first turn on your first turn, which is honestly a really strong play, even though that squirrel's probably going to die. And then we have 4 Honorable Vanguard. This is one of the very few class or floating memories in the deck. We just want cheap allies, and you do need some floating memory. It is really nice to see one of those in hand with like a Hasty Messenger so that you can actually go into your level 1 for free. We do run Banner Knight. If you do go into the level 2, depending on what you have in your hand will kind of determine if you go into level 2 or not. And Banner Knight is just really fantastic when you pair it with something like an Arthur and just start buffing all your guys like crazy. 4 Inspiring Call, and this is pretty much the reason that I pick Lorraine for aggro. I really, really like this card, and you know, the Blazing Throw, the Inspiring Call, all that stuff resolves around basically having weapons out. And I mean, an Inspiring Call you can do with attack cards and stuff, but it's easier with a weapon. It's more consistent. And I just think they're really fantastic aggro cards. So this is a really, really good card because basically this deck is just spam allies like way harder than any other deck does. Talking about cheap, strong allies, Blitz Mage easily can die, but that 3 damage hurts a ton if you do pull it off. And then Clumsy Apprentice. You know, our focus with the deck is really just to spam out the board. So even though it's just a 1/1 that hurts yourself, you are rushing your opponent. You are in a race to the finish, and this will really help you fill out your board while also like not, you know, when you lose your Woodland Squirrels but then you play your Clumsy Apprentice, it feels like you're keeping a little bit of that value back and not just completely emptying out your hand. Strapping Conscript is not bad for a 2-cost 2/1, just in general, but then if you actually do go into your level 2, it becomes a 3/2, and it becomes better than a Blitz Mage. So, but still not a bad card just by itself. Don't get like stuck thinking that you have to be level 2 to play this. You can definitely play it as your level 1. And then we're playing Arthur 4 times as well. So Gildas and Arthur are in here as the unique allies. Whenever I build a really like heavy focused rush deck, I always seem to throw 4 Arthur, 4 Gildas in. It's just they're so strong. And then we have 4 Cemetery Sentry. So basically this is in here because you do need some like good turn 1 plays. We're not running Cremation or Creative Shock, so we're not running as strong of turn 1 plays that Fire has, or as many options, I should say. Your best turn 1 plays are like play Arthur, rest, or go Gildas, Cemetery Sentry, something like that. And so we just basically have this in here because if you are lucky and you have like a Tempered Steel floating memory, or even a Flame Rune Swordsman floating memory in hand, it really helps your value. And then just putting a guy on board is good as well. So those are kind of our turn 1 plays. Flame Rune can also be a turn 1 play as a backup. Hasty Messenger, if you're going second, is a really fantastic turn 1 play because this deck, unlike other Fire Lorraine decks, is not really like guaranteed their first level up for free. You might actually have to banish from your memory for this deck, which feels weird as a Fire Lorraine, but it does make sense with what the deck is trying to accomplish, and like you just don't have that luxury of taking the time to set up floating memory in your graveyard. So, but if you do get to go like second and your opponent already has a Spirit out and you can attack with Hasty Messenger and you do discard a floating memory, it feels really good. Then we have stuff to discard with Hasty. We have 3 Blazing Throw. You could do 4, you could do 2. This is a ratio that you can kind of tweak around with. I really, really, really like this card. I talk about it all the time. We put a Blazing Throw in the Fire Sylvie list that we ran because I was like, if you draw that 1 Blazing Throw in your deck, you just materialize your Sword of Seeking and you go out with it, and it's a huge 5 damage combo for pretty much like no, like for a very low cost. In this deck, you get your free sword when you go to level 1. We are playing other swords that will give you a bonus, like Ornamental gives you that 1 on the ally, and then you sack it off for Blazing Throw. So even though you can't use it, you know, it's still 5 damage there as well. So Blazing is just fantastic. And then we have kind of an odd choice. I have 3 Ignited Stab in here. So the reason for this is because it helps with the rending count for fire element cards. And there is another card that's like you put down 1. It's a 1 cost as well. If you only have 1 in your memory, then it does 3 damage. So it does do a slightly more damage for the same cost, but you have to play it as your first card of the turn, basically. And that can just get a little weird with Gildas, and it's also a norm type. So I'm going for Ignited Stab, but basically I'm treating this card as just a 2 damage card. You know, like that's really all it is. It's essentially a 2 damage spell that just costs super cheap because you're not going for those really big Lorraine hands in this deck. You're just going for as much damage as fast as possible. And then we have Rending Flames in here because obviously Rending Flames is really good. It's the only card in the deck that does require fire stuff in the graveyard. And honestly, if your opponent goes Nullifying Lantern, there's a good chance that they're just being too slow anyways, and you'll kill them off with your allies. So this isn't like the win con of the deck, but it's definitely a backup win con. You can use this against something like a Lorraine deck that did go into level 2 and swept your whole board. You know, with how many allies we do play, they're going to draw a lot of cards. But the hope is that you have actually done enough damage where you just go into your Sword of Adversity because you have no allies because they just cleared them all for your materialization, and then you just do Rending Flames, and that's 10 damage right there. So, you know, hopefully you've done enough damage that is lethal or gets you close enough to actually still closing out the game even though you lost all of your tempo and they gained a bunch of tempo. So that's basically the theory there, but I mean, it is essentially designed to beat Rai. They just can't deal with the obscene amount of allies and just fast-paced gameplay that you're presenting to them. And yeah, just an interesting little deck that I have had an immense amount of success. I've tested against Erupting Rai and our normal Arcane Rai, and it doesn't lose, honestly. So that's it for today, guys. We'll be back with more deck profiles soon. Peace.